This is The Healthy Healer, where true voice is your medicine. This is where we help doctors and other healers navigate through the challenging times by learning from the best minds in the healing industry. Laugh, cry, and be surprised. It's entertainment, education, and inspiration so you can continue to be the unique and amazing healer you were destined to be. Welcome to humanity. Welcome to The Healthy Healer with Dr. Fred.
Hello and welcome again to another amazing episode of The Healthy Healer. This is Dr. Fred, and it is my pleasure and honor to be delivering to you this amazing podcast. I have the opportunity to actually visit with and then have great conversations and introduce you to healthy healers, people who have earned their access to being healers by having a life of their own prior to being who they eventually became. Often these are people who are off the beaten trail, meaning they're not practicing necessarily conventionally, and they got there through their own path that was designed for them by who knows who and what knows what. And then they got to that space and have found themselves to be effective healers as a function of healing themselves and bringing whatever they learned in that healing forward to their clients, patients, or customers, however you want to describe it. Today is no different. I have an amazing guest here. Elizabeth Mintun is my guest, and she is from Columbus, Ohio. She doesn't know that most of my practice was in Cincinnati, Ohio, about 90 miles south of her. And I spent most of my life, including most of my professional life, in my private practice in Cincinnati, Ohio. And my daughter, of course, went to Ohio State. So I have some connection to Columbus. And I went to Michigan, so I have a major Michigan-Columbus problem with Columbus relationship. Anyways, so off we go with Elizabeth Mintun. I'll tell you a little bit about her. Elizabeth is a psychotherapist and a mindfulness coach. She has a private practice practicing psychotherapy in Columbus, Ohio, and has an expertise with working with trauma. She is a facilitator and online self-care membership for women called the Calming Ground, which supports and guides women to move from feeling depleted, overwhelmed, and exhausted to feeling energized, confident, and inspired. She infuses her psychotherapy and mindfulness membership with her knowledge of meditation, her love of nature, and her value of providing a safe and sacred space through compassionate presence. Elizabeth is also a Qigong teacher and a forest therapy guide. Without further ado, there's more to her bio, but I can't wait to actually get it from her own words. What Elizabeth Mintun actually, how she got to be who she got to be, and what kind of things she's doing now that represent healing in the largest way for women and other folks who come into her pathway who are lucky enough. So I guess women and other folks. That's funny. So, Elizabeth, one thing we share in common is we have 3 cats. We've already determined that. I have Valentino, Desposito, and Winston as my feline trio. What are the name of your 3 cats out there in Columbus, Ohio?
We've got Beans, Sussy, and Rosie.
Are these 3 female cats?
Beans is male, but
Okay.
The other 2 are female. Yeah.
All right. I was going to say we could actually have a little bit of a meeting here as all 3 of mine are boys. So anyways, we delayed getting started because my robo litter was going through its cycle, and that's a litter box, an automatic litter box I have here. And we've already established a couple of different relationships we have besides being Ohioans and loving or hating Columbus, Ohio, depending on where you are in the stream. We also have these 3 cats, and we're out of the box psychotherapists. Elizabeth, I like to ask my guests one particular question, and I call it the 9-letter question. And it often gets us started by breaking the ice in a good way. Not a difficult question, but it throws people back a little bit. So be prepared for that. And the question is, Elizabeth Mintun, who are you?
It's interesting. I was in actually a meditation workshop not long ago. And what came up for me in that workshop that immediately came back when you asked that question is that I am light.
Light. That's fantastic. Tell us a little bit more. What do you mean by light?
So I think obviously, I'm here and I am in my physical form and I am human. I feel like the spirit that I really connect with in myself and that I find in connection with in other people is that is the lightness that we're all, in my experience, we all radiate light, right, in different ways. And so I connect with my light and then connect with the light in others.
That's beautiful. I really love that. But when you say light, some of the studying I do is in Kabbalah, for instance, and light has a lot is infused into Kabbalah and early, into the way back in the days of creation. Light gets a lot of energy in biblical text, and in what are we here to do, and what was here before, and then there was light. First, it's what really happened here in the beginning. And for you to grab on to the light that is yours and realize that it is your resonating light that brings healing to the people that you come in contact with. And by the way, if you're not watching this, if you're listening and not watching this, might see that she really is light. And that in her presence, I actually feel healing coming on just by being with her, watching her, and being with her energy. So if you are watching, you likely can confirm what I'm saying. Elizabeth, it's bold and honest to take on that you are light, and that's what you're here to do, is bring that light forward. My guess is that you haven't always known that you were light, and that there were times when things were pretty dark or pretty murky or pretty unclear or untethered or aimless or confusing or in some ways off track. And I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about the ride that you've taken, not only through the dark times, the whole ride that you've taken to become a healer focused on light.
Hmm. So there's a short answer and a long answer.
You give us a medium answer. That's a good one.
Okay. So I would say that, yes, I have not known that my whole life. And I think what comes up for me first is the way that I learned in life to disconnect from myself, and for all kinds of reasons, right? I can go all the way back to my childhood for this, but in order to survive on some level. And I think that in my adulthood, I have been in a process of really walking through the tunnel of darkness in order to re-find myself. And just a brief story. I was married to, and I was in a relationship that I believe was emotionally and verbally abusive to me. And from there, I really found myself disappearing. And it wasn't until I could reclaim my light, my power, my value, that I was able to move out of that situation and back into myself. And then from there, I had to then move even further into, for example, really coming to terms with the ways that I hold stress in my body. And I'm a psychotherapist. I believe in psychotherapy. And I was finding that I was still holding all of this constriction. At the end of the day, I would still feel all this tension in my shoulders and my upper back. And I got interested in that. And I was interested in, what was this tension that I was still holding? I was much freer in myself. I was much freer in my life, but I was still holding this tension. And it was from there that I found Qigong. And that was a big pivotal time for me of transformation, where I became more and more in tune with the energy that I experienced in Qigong. We call it Qi, and able to really come into presence with that energy, that light. And so that's my sort of medium version.
Okay. One of the things that's really interesting here, as I listen to you, is this idea that in that toxic or uncomfortable relationship, that your response, as you said, is the word disappearance. And what's really interesting about disappearance is, of course, it's entirely light related. That in order to disappear, in order to appear, you have to have light. And so in order to disappear, you have to have the absence of light, the absence of the reflection of light. And in order to, what you said, in order to find yourself again, you needed to reclaim light from being disappeared to reclaiming your light. And then you've come to terms with this idea of being a light source and with how you were holding stress in your life. And then again, more light that came in through the Eastern non combative martial art known as Qigong, where you really got in touch with the flow of your own Qi. And it sounds like that was another pivot, like just one pivotal moment is inside of this relationship or at the end as it's approaching its end, very uncomfortable relationship that you had. And then on the other apogee is this coming in touch with Qigong. It sounds like of all the things that you could have chosen, that's not surprising to me, but it may be slightly surprising to our listeners who don't understand the power of Qigong. Can you tell us a little bit about what Qigong really brought to you as far as being a mindfulness coach, being a Qigong teacher that you are? And where does Qigong fit into who you now are as a source of light and a leader for women and a forest trainer as well? A forest therapy guide is what you call yourself, and in the whole creation of the calming ground. I imagine Qigong has something to do with all of that got its birth.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes. Okay. So it's interesting. I left that relationship and I felt really enclosed. And so what was really interesting in reflecting back is when I left that relationship, one of the biggest passages for me or feelings that I had was that I needed to open the windows. It was warm outside, so I could, in Ohio, and so I could open the windows, open the doors, go outside, go hiking, go camping. I just wanted to get out of the house in a way that was get back to the earth. And because I had felt very enclosed, there was a lot of resistance to that and in my relationship at the time. And so it began there, just the kind of coming back into how much I loved the natural world, how much I felt home in myself when I was outdoors. And then from there, so I became a teacher of or a guide with forest therapy, which is also known as forest bathing, also Shinrin Yoku, depending on who you're talking to. And then from there, I was interested in still practicing something that I could also bring inside, or another way that I could bring healing to my clients. And so I stumbled on Qigong because somebody had mentioned it to me as a good idea. I thought, oh, interesting. I don't know what that is. Didn't think much more about it. And then a year or so later, I came back to it and I started practicing. And there's this one story in particular that I tell that was transformational for me.
sure.
And that was when I was in that particular time, I was in a weekend workshop intensive, and we were just doing this very simple Qigong meditation. And I remember I had meditated through all kinds of different retreats and different practices in workshops in my history. So meditation wasn't new to me, but there was just something about this particular day, and maybe it was where I was in my life, where I was meditating and I had this perception. My eyes were closed. It was in darkness, again, back to the darkness. And I had this perception that I was at the precipice or at the edge of this cliff. And I didn't really know what that meant. What is this cliff? I didn't have any kind of much cognition around it. It was just, I think I'm at the edge of this cliff, and I got scared. I got
Mm,
scared about what would it be like for me to move off this proverbial cliff. I felt like in terror for a minute,
yeah.
or I don't know how long, a few moments. And then I decided to take the plunge to try. And I remember the fear I had and feeling like I was just going to tip over. I was going to go into this cliff. This is all in meditation. I'm not actually tipping,
Sure.
right? I'm sitting. And in this case, it was a sitting meditation, not in Qigong. It isn't always. And I remember the feeling I had of being completely enveloped in love. It wasn't falling. It was like almost like being held in this warm, peaceful, like I can't even describe it, almost like being held in love.
Mm,
And I think what I encountered there was full presence, was letting go of having to hold on, to control, to constrict all the tension, the ways that shows up in my body, and just really allowing myself to surrender and feel what it's like to just be.
Mm.
And so for me, there's a long journey there, but that was such a transformational moment. And I can't unknow what that was like after
I
that
understood.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really beautiful story. I see and feel that. You're really great at the vivid share that represents. I really feel like I was on the side of the cliff with you there, and I can
Mhm.
understand falling off into full presence and just sheer love. So thank you for sharing that with us. And was that before the creation of your program? Is that did that lead to the common ground, like the genesis of the common ground, or how does that
Yes.
connect? Yes.
Yes.
Mm,
Yes. So I was in my practice. I was doing psychotherapy. I had been for years. And I was in therapy myself. I believe that, as a therapist, I need to know what and be on my own journey and my own path and be on the client side. And so what I was noticing though is I wasn't quite reaching fully into this tension that I was carrying. And when I, through these different experiences, and particularly when I experienced that kind of peace, I realized that these are ways that we can reach some of these places, right? These are
mm,
just that reaches into those crevices that are so hard to let go of. And
mhm.
so from there, it wasn't very long after, I launched the Common Ground membership, which is an online membership. And I decided to focus on women for that because I'm a woman, and also because I think sometimes we have men do too. And I think, and anybody who's non binary too. And I also think that there is something in that is a message that's very strong to women to not prioritize our care, to take care of before
Mhm,
we really allow that space. And so I wanted to reach to women and really invite them into the possibility that this kind of peace can exist.
mhm. Beautiful. Really great. Makes a lot of sense, and thank you for sharing, and also thank you for being so inclusive. It's really important these days that we do that. So, and it's true that I think that men do have their version of it, but it's very clear that where your emphasis is, where your forte is, where your primary, we'll say you're the primary target population or the ideal clients or whatever seem like this would be a woman-based practice primarily. And there is something in the breeding of women perhaps, or in the what it's like to be a modern Western woman at these times, is that caregiving above taking care of yourself is a critical phenomena that has people probably pretty deficient in spending the time that they need to fall into true presence or true love or really true yin in some ways, like honest to goodness yin based existence. Is this something that you find with your work with women? And are these, is there a certain kind of demographic inside of women that is drawn to your kind of care, or who is it that you typically attract?
That's a great question. So there's quite a range. I would say though that if I were to pinpoint the majority, many of these women are professional. They work hard. And they have a lot of
Makes so much sense.
yeah, they have a lot of ambition, and
Yeah,
they have families and
yeah,
homes, and they're juggling so much. And a lot of
yeah.
times they don't even feel that they have enough time to even stop for 5 minutes and breathe.
Right. Mhm.
And so that is, yes, that is the demographic that I'm mostly working with. I work with them much. I have a whole range, but that is, I would say that the majority are really busy, hardworking women who are trying to juggle so
Mhm.
much and get
Yeah.
and lose themselves in the process.
A yang and balance is what it really sounds like, and
Yes.
that's what you're bringing them is the peacefulness of the inside, and there's
Yeah.
something that Qigong does to rebalance all of that, as I understand it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So is
Yeah.
Qigong a good portion? Is Qigong or Tai Chi or meditation a good portion of what Common Ground is about?
So I don't call it a qigong membership, but it does bring a lot of the elements of qigong, the meditation as well, but a moving meditation and breath work, moving meditation bringing in the breath, which I think is a lot of what Qigong's about, and really reconnecting with energy and vitality. I also incorporate elements of forest therapy, of forest bathing into the practice. Or into the membership, inviting people to go outside and maybe offering them the possibility of a different way of connecting with themselves in the natural world. Mm-hmm. And I would say, though, that really I'm moving from the idea that we all have this chi, this energy, and offering them the possibility of really cultivating their energy.
So what is the relationship between chi and light?
I don't know that I see them as much different necessarily, and that if we have stagnation, so if there's a stagnation in the flow of our chi, our energy, life force, right? We tend to feel more depleted and less full of light. I think what happened to me in that relationship is I was stagnant. Mm-hmm. I had my energy, my life force was depleted. And so for me, I think that personally, this is my perspective, I think that they're one and the same, that as we cultivate and really nourish that energy, we nourish our light, and we have more to offer, more light to offer.
Yes. So I think that's the answer that I was thinking you might give, that they're really similar, that if not exactly the same, the life force or essence of life force in both cases. Whether it's the chi flow or the radiating light, there's something about the essence of the vital force coming through one way or another, and then just allowing us to decompress or to re-nourish our depletions or our blockages and what it means to be a full human being. It also sounds like on the cliff during the dream state, if you will, during the meditative state that you were there, that there was an invitation from a divine source of somewhere for you to go ahead and fall in, go ahead and surrender, go ahead and discover what you're going to discover for yourself, either via chi or via light or via surrender. Like in some ways, surrendering to the chi/light was what the invitation was at that moment, that you thought about, were terrified about, and did anyways, and then it altered your whole life. Do you have anything to say about your experience with that, or how that might apply to any of our listeners who might have or might now go through a similar experience in the next few days or weeks, just having listened to you?
What I would offer is, I think most of all, and maybe this might sound strange, is permission. I think if we can allow ourselves the permission without judgment to notice that terror, that holding on, then I think there can be an opening to letting go. But I think if we judge ourselves and think that, oh no, I'm not supposed to feel this way, we get in our heads, it can pull us away from that moment. So I think I would really invite anyone who's listening, if they can, we're in different places within ourselves and how ready we are to offer ourselves that kind of permission, but the permission to just notice what's coming up and allow, and then you might feel into this surrender. And then for people who have felt this experience, my invitation would be to share if you feel comfortable. If it doesn't feel, sometimes we can hold things really intimately, and there's this place for that, absolutely. And what I've noticed is, in my experience of sharing the possibility of this piece, this experience that I've had in all different kinds of ways, even if I'm not exactly telling the story, just in the kind of the ways that I'm showing up, I notice that people allow themselves a little bit more of that possibility too.
For sure, that's been my experience talking to you. I just want to let you know, and we're all going through significant transformational changes, and I certainly am as well. And I'm touched and moved by how you present that. So I just want to let you know that that's where you're hitting me. And I don't doubt that I'm speaking for most, if not all of our listeners. That's the space that you're creating. So by creating the space of possibility and transformation, by really just speaking honestly, candidly, and authentically from the experience on the cliff and who you've now become as a functional guide for oftentimes women inside of the common ground, and as a psychotherapist and qigong teacher and forest therapy teacher, there's something you bring forward by being you that naturally opens the space for anyone who's around with you to explore that inside of themselves. Now, for me, as I sit here now, almost like a client, almost, wow, look what's happening to me. I'm actually experiencing this viscerally or even beyond viscerally from my core as I'm with you. There's something really, again, very calming and reassuring and expansive in what life can mean if we allow ourselves to surrender into this space that you speak of. So I'm going to guess, I'm going to hope that what I'm speaking to is what you're speaking about, and that I am receiving what you're putting down, if you will, at some point, just by expressing your own experiences. I don't like the word contagion, but it is something like the resonance allows for me to experience a little bit of what your experience is, and ultimately that experience is a healing energy. So I do commend you for being that, and more than anything, commend you for being in the healing arts. Not so much in being that. It's not like you deserve a bunch of credit for having gotten there. Some of it is outside of your bounds and is given to you. And yes, you deserve that credit, but it's more so than that. The idea that you would have that and then be eager, willing, and interested in delivering that to women or other people inside your psychotherapy practice. Other people, again, men. I guess the other people would be men, except in the non-binary world, of course. That's where the commendation comes from, is thank you for being a healer, and thank you for being a really a healed healer as well. So really, really wonderful to hear your story. If you have something that you wanted to say to the women and men who are listening to us today, what would that be? Like something altogether. Maybe I touched on it and you gave us this answer with surrender, or be open to it. Is there anything else that you can say about the greater state of affairs inside this very troubling world, for instance? You've noticed it's pretty challenging these days, right? I assume
Yeah.
that it's challenging in Columbus as well. What is it that you have to say about people who are really struggling these days, maybe to those people?
Mm, yeah. I would say that the struggle is real, and I have so much compassion. And I think sometimes and I'm speaking really generally here, but sometimes there can be a response to want to hop over the struggle. No, we can all be in this light together. But I think it's really important to honor that there is pain and there is
Hmm.
struggle. And sometimes this may not even feel accessible.
Mm.
And so I would start there, just really offering space to validate the pain and the struggle, and sometimes the hopelessness
Hmm.
that can take over us. And
Hmm.
then also I would offer that the more we can cultivate this light, this hope, this energy, this vitality in ourselves, this life force, the more we can offer that into this world.
Hmm.
So I think that would be
I think
my
that's
main.
great. It's wonderful. There's something the phrase I like to use, the email that, of course, and the brand I have is called Welcome to Humanity. And Welcome to Humanity, it really just underlines exactly what you're saying. It's tolerating the intolerable, speaking the unspeakable, experiencing the unexperiencable, really just getting that there are things out there that are heinous and horrible and barbaric, and it is part of life, and there's massive pain and misery, and that is part of life, and part of the gift of our short term here is to experience all of it. And sometimes it seems theoretical. It's, yeah, I wonder if I can do that which I ask people to do, which is to really embrace the whole thing as beautiful parts of life that allow for that light to actually emerge and be owned and then be delivered. It is in accepting the darkness that the light actually shines through. And there's something really beautiful about that as well. It's a real it's a gift and an evolved human being that can speak to that and then bring that to others. And that's what I see in you. So I really want to thank you for coming on the show today and really bringing forth your true essence and making a difference. Elizabeth, how can people find you and where should they look if they want to learn from you, or like me, want to become a colleague or become a client, or just want to see what you're up to?
Sure. Thecalmingground.com is my website, and you can find me there. I'm on social. I'm on Facebook and Instagram at The Calming Ground. And as far as my psychotherapy practice, I'm licensed in Ohio. That is very specific to Ohio, but that's Reflections Counseling Center of Columbus.
What's
So
that one called again?
that's Reflections Counseling Center of
Okay,
Columbus.
good. Very good.
Yeah.
All right, Elizabeth, anything final, any kind of questions for me or anything you want to ask or anything you want to say to our customers, our listeners, our audience that you can bring? Or really, it's just been a deep pleasure and I've really enjoyed talking to you. You're a real inspiration.
Thank you. I so appreciate the time and the space here with you and with your listeners as well. And just thank you. It's really nice to connect and to have this conversation.
Beautiful. You're welcome. And thank you for being here. And folks, if you like this episode as much as I did, I'm going to ask you to like it or comment on it or share it with others because that's how the show gets known. And we have, really great conversations with great people. And today is no exception at all, as Elizabeth really brought forth her true essence and her inspiration of what it means to be a healed healer. Thanks again, Elizabeth. And for you listeners, we'll catch you on the flip side. Bye. Thanks for being here and bye for now.